Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here, and you. I really welcome my friends and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. If you're feeling charitable, please smash the subscribe button and the like button and make sure you hit on that bell so you get those notifications. You wouldn't want to miss this ugly mug now, would you? And welcome to Monday's edition of the DCE. Monday? Oh my God, I'm not starting again. Welcome to Tuesday's edition of the DCEU Daily. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. So yesterday was very shouty and aggressive and angry. Today we're taking the notch down on the DCEU Daily exclusive here to me at Big Mouth, and we're going to be reading some beautiful Screen Rant articles and discussing them. So we're going to be reading about HBO Max and Screen Rant doing an article how they don't have enough original content at the moment, and maybe they should actually stream the air cut, which I would absolutely be a supporter of. Then we're going to read this one, Green Lantern, how Jordan was chosen by Superman, not his ring. Interesting. Then they're talking about Justice League Dark, Apocalypse War, and the similarities to Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now, I'm only halfway through watching this film, so there's going to be spoilers just in case. I don't care about spoilers just in case you do. And then we're going to be talking about Batman Year One. They're doing an article about that. And then Harley Quinn writer Sam Humphries talks Grief, Inherent Vice, and Booster Gold. That's interesting. And then we're going to finish off with Swamp Thing. It's heading to the CW, and that may get aggressive, and that may get shouty, and I may finish with a little monologue about Jared Leto's Joker. So let's go. Let's click the first article. Isn't this exciting? Not really, but never mind. Let's do this. So, come on, Internet. Come on, Internet. You can do it. You useless sack of shit. Suicide Squad, the air cut, should be on HBO Max. Streaming service HBO Max offers the perfect opportunity for Warner Bros. To release David Ayer's director's cut of 2016 Suicide Squad. Of course, David's been in the news with his social media posts, and that's what I was reacting to really shoutily and aggressively yesterday. David Ayer's original cut of the Suicide Squad would be perfect for Warner Media's streaming service, HBO Max. While DC fans have been championing for the Justice League Snyder Cut for some time now, the air cut of Suicide Squad might be more likely to happen. Don't agree with that. The film had a lot of promise, so DC fans were disappointed when it was maligned upon release. Much like Justice League, however, there seems to be an alternate version of Suicide Squad that exists somewhere, and HBO Max is the ideal platform for it. Before the Snyder Cut was even a thing, Ayer had spoken on how Warner Bros. Meddled with Suicide Squad after Batman v Superman was met with lackluster reception. The studio had doubts over the darker tone the filmmaker was striving for with his team-up movie. This forced the film to change drastically at such short notice, and the result was a mess. Though Suicide Squad did admittedly get a few things right, an extended cut was released on Blu-ray, which I have, of course, but it was still far from Ayer's true version. Isn't it weird, right? Because the extended cut of Suicide Squad is only in SD, but the Ultimate Edition of BVS is actually in 4K. I don't get it, do you? They didn't want to spend the extra money, right? Re-rendering it. So weird. Or maybe it wasn't shot in IMAX, I'm not sure. Since then, the filmmaker has used Twitter to divulge details about his original vision, much like Zack Snyder has done for Justice League, though there doesn't seem to be as much support for the air cut. You're wrong, there is, but we need to make sure that is seen within the trends on social media. But with HBO Max set to launch, there's an argument to be made that now is a good time as any for the film to finally debut as it was meant to in 2016. HBO Max needs original content to compete. HBO Max will be opening in an already crowded market. The streaming wars are more heated than ever, especially with Disney Plus proving to be a success. Disney Plus has a great incentive for audiences. Original Star Wars, Marvel content, The Mandalorian has been a big hit for the studio, and promise of the MCU series like Falcon and the Winter Soldier and WandaVision show that they're really trying to push ahead in terms of original content that audiences can't get anywhere else. Netflix and Amazon Prime also offer a host of original content, the former especially as at the forefront in that regard with beloved films and shows like The Irishman and Stranger Things. I think Stranger Things has seen better days. Good first season, crap rest of seasons. New characters in season 2, crap, boring. Haven't seen it since season 2. It's interesting. My worry for HBO Max is in the title. I really think that Warner should be in the streaming services title, and they've made a mistake there. I don't know if the marketing's enough for people to realise. We know it's a Warner Brothers streaming service, so we'll see the content, the actual content of HBO Max is actually far superior to what you've got on Disney Plus. Disney Plus is awesome in the sense of what it's got. It just doesn't have enough of it. And we know that Disney and Prime Video are doing a great job as well, so very interesting. HBO Max already has a lot of ground to make up. While the service will have lots of films and TV shows available at launch thanks to Warner Media's extensive catalogue of work, it's lacking in terms of originality. Love Life starring Anna Kendrick and a Friends reunion special are intriguing projects, but they can't compete with the shows Netflix has already established or the likes of Disney's upcoming Obi-Wan Kenobi spin-off. True, the Friends reunion is no longer available at launch either, since it's been delayed by the COVID-19. Warner is working on a host of new DC shows for HBO Max, such as Green Lantern, but these won't be available for some time. The original content HBO Max is starting with is a letdown that doesn't put the platform in good stead to debut on May the 27th. Even Apple TV Plus had more diverse set of titles available when it premiered on November 2019. Even Apple TV. The Apple TV is so crap, someone writing an article goes, even Apple TV. There is a concern about HBO Max. I think what it's got to offer is extensive and amazing. I'm just wondering if people are going to bother with it. It's interesting because I'm a Warner Brothers fan. I want it to be successful because I'm also a DC fan, and Warner Brothers do own, obviously, the DC characters. I think for things like a Green Lantern series, people will sign up. But at this moment in time, they're right. The lack of awesome, epic, original content like Disney Plus had from launch is very problematic for Warner Brothers and the platform. It's interesting. The aircut of Suicide Squad would new and exclusive and something that fans would flock to HBO Max for. They need captivating content sooner than later. Considering the trailers for Suicide Squad promised a completely different film from the one fans received, there will be a lot of curiosity to see what Air's true vision looked like. The dceu has an established fan base, and it's something like this that would help HBO Max compete against other streaming titans. I agree. But imagine having the Air cut and the Snyder cut available at launch, which, forget the Snyder cut at launch, he's still got to do stuff to that film, right? But if we could have the Air cut at launch, which I doubt, because I don't think it's a finished film, he still has to do stuff. Surely he has to put the film together. But it could be a promise in maybe a month's time or something. Again, not going to happen. Warner Brothers are not going to go there, unfortunately, but they certainly should. HBO Max launch is occurring during the COVID-19 pandemic, which currently has most of the world household. While HBO Max's international launch is more precarious, there are still millions of Americans turning to streaming services to keep them entertained. This works in services' favour as audiences have the time and curiosity at the moment to give the new platform a chance. But COVID-19 also has a major con for HBO Max too. It's preventing new content from being made. It's a good point. A few weeks ago, I would have shouted at this article, but I think they're right. Hollywood is at a standstill. Not only have countless films had to delay their release dates, but the outbreak has shut down a lot of film and TV productions too. This hampers Warner Media's opportunity to get new content made for HBO Max. This affects the service drastically, as it's keeping their new original content on hold. Under further notice, Warner Brothers and HBO Max announced Warner Max, a new label for producing original films for the streaming service. But the current crisis is putting any plans the studio has in a state of disarray. Indefinitely. While coronavirus is impacting every studio, Netflix and Disney Plus, including its worst for HBO Max, as they're going to have a tougher time enticing audiences with their lackluster launch titles. They need new content as soon as possible to keep up with the other streaming services that have been all able to build their libraries already. Universal's Trolls World Tour is doing impressively on video on demand because audiences want whatever new release they can get their hands on. With so few films coming out in 2020 now, every contemporary release is welcome. Chris Hemsworth's Extraction is Netflix's biggest film to date. Since most theatres are closed, people are turning to streaming sites for their entertainment, considering there's a hiatus with HBO Max's original content, they need to look to alternative options to bring audiences a new content. Suicide Squad isn't a new movie, but the haircut would effectively make it into one, giving HBO Max what could serve as a big new release when it's needed the most. The haircut of Suicide Squad is already done. Well, I just said it wasn't, so interesting. But is there any evidence to back this up? David Ayer has talked at length about the Suicide Squad he wanted to make, and it sounds completely different from the one fans got. The key difference is in the treatment of Jared Leto's Joker. While Suicide Squad's clown print of crime wasn't well received, with Warner Brothers rebooting the character again in Todd Phillips' Joker, well, that's not really a reboot, and I'm not convinced we're done with Jared's Joker, and if we keep up the noise, that would really help the situation. Todd Phillips' Joker. Ayer has revealed that most of Leto's work hasn't been seen. The film was marketed to feature a lot of Joker, but his screen time was reduced massively in the final cut of the movie, with Ayer claiming there are hours of unused footage, and we want to see everything. Now, if they were a decent company, they would have had all that on the bonus features of the Suicide Squad Blu-ray and DVD, but not Warner Brothers. Let's keep it hidden. The release version of Suicide Squad also cut Harley Quinn's arc. Once again, the marketing for the film showed two were fairly interlinked, but they're mostly separated in Suicide Squad, so it's likely Quinn and Joker would have had a lot more to do with each other in Ayer's original story. There were also ties to Justice League in his version, as Enchantress was initially under the control of the Mother Box, but Suicide Squad suffered as a result of studio interference. Ayer has previously mentioned that his cut of the film was finished and even shown in its entirety, but execs wanted to change the tone, so the film was altered. He also divulged that his cut had less pop and more of the squad's dysfunctional family dynamic via Twitter. Wow, that's true, yes, said that. While the Snyder cut of Justice League is almost ready, it seems as though the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad is done. On Twitter, Ayer revealed the copyright holder controls it. The media isn't in a releasable form. The media isn't in the releasable form anyway. It only exists as an archived editorial files. Right, it would be incredibly expensive to release and market. While it might not be cut together, the studio would likely only need a small amount of money to complete it is, as opposed to 30 to 40 million needed for Justice League. You see, what I said was right. It's not ready. It's literally in a vault somewhere and it needs editing together, right? But that wouldn't be a big deal, and they could do that in maybe a month's time. So, of a blockbuster. And the kind of, Justice League, considering, is a fraction of the budget of a blockbuster and the kind of money that Warner Max will be putting into its content. Anyway, it's definitely an affordable option. An Ayer cut wouldn't even need as much financial support. Seeing the film is done. The Snyder cut has a lot of unfinished visuals, but the Ayer cut just needs to be assembled. HBO Max is the perfect home for the film as well. It would boost their figures, allow fans to see the unfiltered vision of Suicide Squad they were promised, and give the platform exclusive and original content that they need to survive the streaming war. This is very true. It's all very true. HBO Max is in a bit of trouble. Now, what we don't know, because we don't know consumer habits well enough, is HBO Max an exciting thing, the new toy that everybody wants, so everyone's going to subscribe to it? Or is it going to be a situation where it's not going to get the traffic they want it to get? They need an occasion. They need an event. And the Suicide Squad, the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad and the Snyder cut of Zack Snyder's Justice League would certainly do that. Even if they said now, it's not ready yet, but coming soon. The director's cut of Suicide Squad, the director's cut of Justice League. That would bring people in straight away. Whenever it's ready, it's ready. Take your time. Fill your boots. It would be amazing. But they are not going to do it. The person who wrote this article is spot on. They don't have enough original content. This would solve their problem. But they're digging their heels in and they don't want to do this. So we have to politely, over on Twitter and other platforms, convince HBO Max that they need to release the Ayer cut and the Snyder cut. So many articles to read today, and I love it. I love reading these articles. It's such fun, and it keeps me calm and rooted, and I don't lose my temper as much. But it's, as you know, it's not that difficult for me to get into a rant these days, is it? And it's really hot out here as well, so that doesn't help my temper. You know, when you're sweaty and hot and you're running around. Anyway, apologies. Green Lantern was chosen by Superman, not his ring. So this must be about a graphic novel or something, but let's give it a read. Because what I want to do is continue looking at the full aspect of DC Comics in graphic novels, film and TV. So it's still always going to be the DCEU Daily. The DCEU will always be our top priority, but this stuff is as important to me. So let's give it a read. Even Green Lantern fans might not know it was Superman who was chosen for the Power Ring, but decided Hal Jordan should get it instead. Wow, I didn't know that. No, I genuinely didn't know that, and that's kind of compelling, isn't it? Let's give this a read. Superman and Green Lantern have faced impossible odds at each other's side, but neither of them know the full story of how Hal Jordan got the ring. That's because Hal Jordan wasn't there when Superman was chosen as Green Lantern. But to be fair, Superman doesn't remember voting for Hal to receive the ring either. They should absolutely integrate this in Jeff Johns' Green Lantern series for HBO Max. It would be amazing. The storytellers of DC Comics have tweaked the mythology, of the Green Lanterns plenty of times over the years, famously revealing that Hal Jordan became Green Lantern due in large part to the fact that he was closest to his predecessor and therefore easiest for the ring to fetch. That luck would fuel Hal to eventually prove himself to the rest of the Green Lantern Corps, demonstrating he isn't just good, but the greatest Lantern of all time. Oh, debatable. Green Lantern fans, comment down below. Do you agree with that? I don't think you do. Anyway, thankfully, the truth behind his selection doesn't rely on luck at all, meaning Hal wasn't just proving himself to his skeptical superiors. He was also proving Superman was right to choose him as Green Lantern before they ever became friends. Yeah, because I suppose, why would Superman need to become Green Lantern? He has all the abilities in the universe. He doesn't really need it. I mean, maybe it would be good for him to be part of a team, a corps. But, you know, he works alone. It works for him. Well, in the new CW show, I'm sure he won't work alone because they're obsessed with teams, aren't they? But anyway, this secret detail in the origin of Hal Jordan is first revealed in Action Comics 642 in a story titled The Decision, the story of the dying Green Lantern. Abin Sur begins the same way every fan already knows. The Lantern crashes in a remote location, slowly bleeding out, and in desperate need of finding his successor, knowing his time is running out. Abin Sur gives his magic ring a direct order. My successor will be absolutely without fear. Find my successor. What happens next is a secret most fans never learned, and which even Hal Jordan is oblivious to. When the ring's energy returns with Superman chosen as the next Green Lantern, the twist is just beginning. Can I just say I've never liked this about Green Lantern, where the ring has to find someone without any fear. There isn't a human anywhere who's not scared. Fear keeps us alert. Fear is part of our emotional. As long as we don't allow fear to rule us, it's good. It's a good emotion to have. So I don't like that aspect, and I think they should get rid of it anyway. Just my opinion. Nobody can blame Abin Sur's ring, since Superman truly is the most fearless. No. Superman has fear. Superman isn't fearless, and being fearless isn't a good trait. You need an element of fear. Oh dear. Anyway, fearless superhero on the face of the earth at the time. But Abin Sur is a veteran of alien conflicts and recognises that Clark Kent is more than just a human being, and as a non-native inhabitant of the space sector, is ineligible to succeed him as Green Lantern. But the ring doesn't just inform Abin Sur that Superman is a Kryptonian. It also reveals he has the exact character and experience to choose who should be entrusted with the ring and rank of Earth's new Green Lantern. And it doesn't take the Man of Steel long to spot a hero in the making. Having apparently interviewed Hal Jordan after he was inexplicably denied his chance to become an astronaut, the test pilot's character and conviction left a mark on the Daily Planet reporter. So much so that even as he begins to explain why Hal Jordan is the man Abin Sur wants to speak with, the fading alien is 2 steps ahead, wiping Superman's memory of the entire event after sending him on his way. Abin Sur's ring begins its search for DC's greatest Green Lantern, Hal Jordan. And the rest, as they say, is history. Even if Superman has no memory of helping make it, Nobody tell Guy Gardner. Oh, I love Guy Gardner. One of my favourite characters. A good little article there, because I think that's a good article to read if you don't know the kind of history of Green Lantern graphic novels as well. I didn't know that. I've read some. There's a brilliant YouTube channel. He reads out a lot of stories. I forgot his name. He's really cool, by the way. Yeah, so I have learned a little bit more about the comics than I did, but that's really interesting. I still don't think any hero should be titled as fearless, though. That kind of annoys me. Right, spoilers ahead for Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. Basically, this is the latest animated film from DC Animated. I've seen half of it. This is going to spoil it for me as well, but I think the parallels towards this and Zack Snyder's Justice League is just too much to ignore. And this is an article by Brad Curran. Brad normally does awesome articles for Screen Rant, so let's give it a read. Apocalypse War is the Justice League movie Snyder's DCEU almost made. Justice League Dark Apocalypse War is not only a very intense DC animated movie, but it also unexpectedly mirrors Zack Snyder's plans for the DCEU. So I wonder if they did this with Zack Snyder's Justice League in mind. I wonder if this is inspired. It would be very interesting to talk to Sam Liu and a few other guys and girls who run this franchise to see if they were inspired with what Zack Snyder did. Some of them may have even already seen the Snyder Cut. Who knows, or knows about it, or knows the content within his film. Very interesting. Justice League Dark Apocalypse War is very different from almost any other DC animated movie, but it's also a remarkably close encapsulation of the DCEU story Zack Snyder had planned. Snyder's work in the DCEU began with 2013's Man of Steel and continued with 2016. Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, both of which remain deeply polarising to this day. Though his involvement with the DCEU continued with Justice League, his departure from the film, along with the last-minute reshoots it went through, resulted in the movie that hit theatres in late 2017, being far removed from the version he directed. Have you noticed even the journalists are not mentioning Autumn being the reason for him leaving the project anymore? Good. Good. You shouldn't be mentioning that young woman's name anyway. It had nothing to do with this situation. And if I was Zack, I'd find it offensive. It must really burn inside him that they used that and made him use that as a reason as well. Terrible, terrible. It's got to be one of the worst moments in movie history, what happened with Zack Snyder's Justice League. Aside from Justice League itself, Snyder had a grandiose vision in mind for the DCEU that was meant to both test and deconstruct DC's most iconic characters like never before. With everything from interplanetary invasions to heroic sacrifices, the story Snyder had intended for his DC films would end up being unexpectedly detoured. With the revamping of Justice League, this would ultimately lead to the rise of the campaign for the release of the Snyder Cut. Arriving in the midst of that Justice League Dark's Apocalypse War is a very unexpected development due to how vivid a representation of Snyder's planned DCEU arc it has proven to be. Not only are its stakes as high and its style as visceral as Snyder's, but the story the movie tells is so similar to Snyder's plans that the parallels between the two are simply impossible to miss. Here are the ways in which Apocalypse War mirrors Zack Snyder's plans for the DCEU. If ever there were an animated superhero movie that completely threw caution to the wind, it's Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. While DC's contemporary animated movies tend to be fairly intense affairs, Apocalypse War makes dead certain that viewers know it's an R-rated battle for the fate of the world, where many characters are either killed or horribly maimed, complete with enough F-bombs to keep it further outside of the PG-13 realm. In short, the subtitle Apocalypse War is as much a descriptor of the movie's content as it is an indicator of its story. This also makes it incredibly similar to Zack Snyder's DC movies, Man of Steel, which was a true PG-13 movie, while the Ultimate Edition of Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice was hard-edged enough to earn an R, and even the movie's theatrical cut is still very hard PG-13. For as split as the reception tends to be on Snyder's movies, his approach to superhero films is a lightning rod, with few filmmakers pushing the limits of injecting material for more mature audiences into superhero movies. Like Snyder does, Apocalypse War operates under the very same mindset. Furthermore, the similarities between Apocalypse War and Snyder's DCEU plans go even deeper. As already mentioned, Justice League Dark Apocalypse War is an extremely violent movie. Multiple heroes are literally torn apart in the first battle on Apocalypse, but the movie also deconstructs its audience's preconceived images of its archetypal characters by making antagonists out of half of them. Following Darkseid's victory, many of the heroes who aren't killed are made into minions under his control. with Batman in particular becoming one of his most valuable assets in maintaining his dominion over Earth. The heroes who do survive find themselves at the lowest point, with Superman completely depowered, Raven struggling to hold her father Trigon at bay, and John Constantine wrapped with guilt over Zatanna's demise. However, this is the basis for the very theme of the movie, that of the vanquished heroes rallying for one last stand, to save a world that has been brought to its knees. On top of that, the parallels with the DCEU story envisioned by Zack Snyder are astonishing. The nightmare future of Darkseid invasion of Earth was first glimpsed in Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, with Snyder having intended for it also to factor into his subsequent DC films. This future was meant to come about via Darkseid's killing of Lois Lane, followed by the distraught Superman aligning with Apokalypse after falling to the anti-life equation. Darkseid's invasion of Earth and the Nightmare run directly parallel to the story Apocalypse War, with Earth finding itself at the mercy of Darkseid as many of its heroes are killed or weaponized. However, the whole point of this was Snyder's aim to confront the Justice League with a seemingly insurmountable challenge, making their battle against Darkseid far more triumphant and illuminating of each character's inherent heroism, as is also the case with Apocalypse War. God, this is a great article. Far more so than other animated superhero films, Justice League Dark Apocalypse War wreaks cataclysmic havoc on the entire world. Even without the sheer number of major heroes brutally killed in the movie, the body count of Apocalypse War is in the billions as a result of Darkseid's victory and his subsequent conquering of Earth. On top of that, the movie also positions these events as deriving from the Flash's decision to save his mother, that form the basis of Justice League The Flashpoint Paradox, with that course of action having already forced Barry Allen to undo his meddling with the timeline of DC animated movie universe continuity arising from it. By the end of the movie, Earth has been sent on a path towards certain destruction, forcing Barry to reset the timeline once again with another Flashpoint. Wow. As I say, I've only seen about 20 minutes of this film, and I liked what I saw. This is in line with the style of Snyder's DC movies, with the colossal level of destruction seen in Man of Steel being one of the major criticisms that the movie was subject to. This feeds directly into the world's uncertain opinion of Kal-El and the Dark Knight's distrust of him in Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. And while that movie includes far less collateral damage, it carries over Snyder's theme of consequences deriving from existence of metahumans and superhero activity. Naturally, this was also meant to carry over into Justice League and beyond, with Snyder's plans also including a deeper dive into the Nightmare, along with the key role that the Flash's time travel abilities were to play in Batman's efforts to undo the damage of it. Above all else, Justice League Dark Apocalypse War establishes the interconnected DC animated movie universe as truly its own universe and telling its own story. Through the Flashpoint Paradox would set things in motion. This continuity truly kicked off with Justice League War, with Apocalypse War serving as the conclusion of the film's set. Within the continuity, by the end of the film, Apocalypse War definitely establishes the continuity. It bookends as its own independent story. This also solidifies the comparison to what Zack Snyder had planned. Snyder's DC films were intended as a 5-movie arc, with a clearly delineated beginning, middle, and end. Though full details are not known about how it would have played out, it's known that Snyder planned for Batman to die, like the finale embodied by Apocalypse War. The story Snyder envisioned would not have been the be-all and end-all of DC movies, but instead its own story arc with its own end point. Also, if Batman dies, there's other people who can take up the mantle, right? We already know that. Apocalypse War has created a lot of hype for its role as the conclusion of the DC animated movie universe, while also positioning itself as being like no other animated superhero movie with its world-ending scale and graphic violence. However, the most unexpected element of it is just how closely it follows the same path as what Zack Snyder had planned for his 5-movie arc. In its own very surprising way, Justice League Dark Apocalypse War has ultimately added even more fodder for the continuing campaign for the Justice League Snyder Cut by just how much it embodies the essence of the Snyder's planned DCEU story. Well done, Brad. That's a brilliant article. So I want to say this, and we'll move on quickly, because time's running there's a lot of stuff to do, right? But how can you slaughter Man of Steel for being too dark and too violent, right? And all that destruction. How can you say Batman v Superman's too dark, right? How can you stop Zack Snyder's Justice League because it's too dark, right? But then you do an animated movie as dark, maybe darker than all those films put together, and everyone's lauding it, it's making money on VOD, and everyone's happy with it. I don't know. I don't get it. Why were live action films not okay to be dark? But an animated thing, which normally is linked towards children, right? And animated stuff isn't anymore, really, let's be honest. Let's be honest. So if an animated movie can be as dark and as brutal as it wants, why couldn't Zack Snyder's 5-movie Justice League arc? I don't understand that. Comment down below. Let me know how this is even logical. Nuts. This industry is nuts. I'm going to calm down. I'm going to calm down. Darren Aronofsky doing a DC movie. Imagine that. Have you ever seen The Fountain? This guy is like no other writer-director in Hollywood. He's so good. He's so clever. And in 2000, he was developing a Batman Year One movie. Another DC kind of film that could have happened but didn't. This is so frustrating, right? What Aronofsky's Batman Year One movie looked like and why it didn't happen. In the early 2000s, Batman Year One adaptation was in development with Darren Aronofsky as writer and director. Here's what it would have been like. Before Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy happened, an adaptation of Frank Miller's Batman Year One was in development with Darren Aronofsky as writer and director. The project was ultimately cancelled, but details about the story have been revealed over the years, being one of the most popular superheroes ever. Batman has been adapted to the big screen multiple times. The first one in 1943 in black and white, 15-chapter series with Lewis Wilson as the Caped Crusader and Douglas Croft as Robin. Years later, a feature film adaptation of the 1960s Batman TV series starring Adam West and Burt Wood was released, but Batman's popularity on the big screen began in 1989 thanks to Tim Burton's film simply titled Batman, starring Michael Keaton as the title character. The film was a big critical and financial success and made way for a sequel. Batman Returns in 92. After that, things went downhill with this version of the Caped Crusader, with the arrival of Joe Schumacher's Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. Following the critical failure of Batman and Robin, Warner Bros. Decided to reboot the Batman film franchise with an adaptation of one of the character's most popular graphic novels, Frank Miller's Batman Year One. After receiving pictures from Joss Whedon and Joel Schumacher, Warner Bros. Hired Darren Aronofsky to write and direct the project, with Frank Miller working with him on the script. I mean, that's just awesome, isn't it? This version of Batman Year One never saw the light of day, and Nolan's trilogy happened instead. But details on Aronofsky's vision have been revealed over the years, giving fans a taste of what would have been a very different version of the Defender of Gotham. Here's what Darren Aronofsky's Batman Year One adaptation looked like. You know what? No disrespect to Chris Nolan, he's one of the great filmmakers. He's not a comic book guy, right, at all. You've got Darren Aronofsky, right, and a comic book legend, developing a film. Why would you scupper that? Why would you cancel that? It's nuts. This industry is nuts. Batman Year One was written by Frank Miller and published in 1987. Offers a noir-inspired version of Batman's origins, along with the subplot where Jim Gordon dealt with Gotham City's corruption. Other film adaptations of Batman have taken elements from this graphic novel, and while the studio was aiming for an adaptation of it, Aronofsky's idea was far from it, instead being loosely based on it. In it, Bruce Wayne wasn't an orphaned billionaire raised by the family's butler, Alfred, at the Wayne Manor, and instead lost all his fortune following the death of his parents and was left homeless. Interesting. Bruce was then taken in by a man called Big Al, the African-American owner of an auto repair and a former Vietnam War combat medic. Aronofsky's inspiration were the film's Death Wish and the French Connection, and even compared his version of Bruce Wayne Batman with Taxi Driver's Travis Bickle. Oh my God. He was looking to do a Joker movie. He was trying to do a Todd Phillips to Batman. I think I know now why this film didn't happen. I mean, it would have been awesome, but come on. The fans wouldn't have liked it, let's be honest. Saying he wanted to infuse the story with a dose of reality, where we heard that before, and what better way than taking away all of his fortune and growing up in the streets of Gotham City, where he truly got a taste of what the citizens were going through. How Batman learned to fight in year one. In the graphic novel, Bruce Wayne returns to Gotham City at the age of 25, and after training abroad in martial arts, manhunting and science for 12 years in Aronofsky's version. However, it all happened differently. Given that Bruce Wayne lost his fortune, he wouldn't have had the resources to go on a trip like that to learn martial arts and more, so he instead learned through various books. Bruce read a lot about various types of combat and practiced until he mastered all those moves. In addition to that, he earned the name Batman under very different circumstances. Although Bruce also learned a lot about chemistry through books and created a number of chemical-based weapons, one of his most significant objects was a ring with his father's initials, TW. When punching criminals, the ring left an imprint similar to the shape of a bat, and so the media began calling the mysterious vigilante Batman. I can live with that, that's cool. The Batcave is the headquarters of Batman and is located beneath his personal residence, Wayne Manor. Aronofsky's version would have changed this element from Batman's world by locating it in an abandoned subway station. As for the Batmobile, and given that this Bruce grew up in a repair shop, it would have been a tricked out Lincoln Continental with blacked out windows and bus engines under the hood, very far from the usually made from scratch mobile. Interesting, would that have gone down well? Aronofsky's Batman Year 1 would have included Selina Kyle, aka Catwoman, but again, a different version. In the graphic novel, Selina Kyle is a prostitute and a dominatrix, oh dear, who decided to begin her own life of crime after watching Batman fight. Aronofsky's version would have also had Selina as a prostitute, though an African-American one known as Mistress Selina. She would have repeatedly had a role in the creation of Batman, with Bruce's first act as the Caped Crusader being confronting a corrupt cop bothering Selina at the local cat house. Selina would have then knocked Bruce out during the conflict between the three, and he would have woken up next to the body of Campbell, presumably killed by Selina. There are a couple of reasons why Aronofsky's Batman Year 1 never saw the light of day. First off, it would have been a very dark version of Batman, which might not have seemed like much nowadays, but was a big deal in the early 2000s, when Warner Bros. Was looking for a Batman film kids could watch too, and of course one that could sell a lot of merchandise. Miller has shared there were creative differences with Aronofsky, as Miller's Batman was too nice for him. Oh dear. With Miller telling the filmmaker that Batman wouldn't do that, he wouldn't torture anybody. This darker tone, along with many changes to Batman's backstory and key elements like the Batcave and Batmobile, made the studio pass on it. There's no question the fans wouldn't have liked it, but I still think it would have been a good offshoot, one-off, standalone Batman movie, just like Joker movie is for the Joker. So they could have really kind of done it like a Black Label movie or something. I still think they should have went with it. It would have been controversial, but if they just said it's an Elseworld story, they would have got away with that. In addition, that the studio had an actor in mind for the role of Bruce Wayne Batman, while Aronofsky wanted someone else. The director's initial pitch was a story inspired by The Dark Knight Returns, with Clint Eastwood as the Caped Crusader. But once he started working on Batman Year 1, his ideal Bruce Wayne was none other than Joaquin Phoenix. According to Aronofsky, Warner wanted Freddie Prinze Jr. We've talked about this before, haven't we? To play the character, and that's when he realised they had a very different idea for the film. All of this, and most likely more that hasn't been revealed yet, made the studio decide not to move forward with the project and instead put all its attention into Nolan's trilogy, which was a blend of dark and realistic Batman, with all those elements from the comic books Warner wanted to keep. Aronofsky moved on and made The Fountain. I love this film, starring Hugh Jackman, followed by the wrestler Black Swan, Noah, most recently Mother, in 2017. Batman Year 1 wasn't forgotten completely, and Nolan's Batman Begins took a lot of elements from it. As for Joaquin Phoenix, he ended up joining the world of DC Comics in Todd Phillips' Joker, as new version of the Clown Prince of Crime. Darren Aronofsky's version of the Caped Crusader would have been different, but interesting to watch, and it had been pitched in recent years, it would have probably been greenlit without a problem. Well, Darren Aronofsky now with the Black Label, we've had the Joker, why can't his version of Batman be this? I'd actually like this. I tell you what, Darren Aronofsky, you still got a chance with the Black Label out there. Todd Phillips, have a chat with this guy. You never know what's possible. Anything's possible in this industry, because this industry is nuts. Oh, anyway, yes, definitely would have liked to see that version. And as I say, do it in the Black Label universe. A sequel to Joker movie as well. How awesome would that be? Somebody call Darren Aronofsky now. Harley Quinn is a very historic character in terms of being one of DC's most popular characters in the comics, but not originating from the comics. She originated from the Batman animated series. So this is pretty interesting. They're talking about a recent graphic novel here. Harley Quinn writer talks grief, Vice and Booster Gold. Harley Quinn and Booster Gold, DC's new odd couple? Well, let writer Sam Humphries explain why this story of grief is one Harley was born to tell. Fans of Harley Quinn didn't know what to expect from her latest trip out to the DC's universe version of Hollywood. But as her adventure has taken her from professional wrestling to a twist-sitting, turning neo-noir murder case and even a team-up with Booster Gold himself, one thing has become clear. Whether or not Harley knew she was running from her mother's death, she has brought her grief along for the ride. And according to writer Sam Humphries, that's entirely by design. When Humphries took the helm of Harley's comic series, it would have been a leap to expect Joker's ex-girlfriend to graduate to a full-blown new god. But in one of the most unexpected surprises in DC's slate, it was Harley Quinn facing her mother's cancer that left her too winded to keep on fighting. As Harley Quinn 72 finally arrives in the operating comic book stores, both physical and digital, Screen Rant got the chance to speak with Humphries about the lingering impact of Sharon Quinzel's losing battle with cancer and the next twists in Harley's West Coast case. If it wasn't clear already, fans of Quinn, Booster Gold, and the tales of the crushing grief punctuated by adult-sized babies shouldn't miss another issue. Readers can find the full interview as well as an exclusive preview of the new issue below. So, this is the writer. This is the interviewer. I have to start by asking about what might be the most significant growth for Harley, which you brought in your run, which was the death of her mother. It was a hard-hitting story, but it's having a more lasting impact than maybe some readers are used to. Can you speak to that decision to not only have Harley face that, but to use that as an ongoing element to her character? Sam Humphries, from a fundamental level, I believe Harley Quinn is an iconic character, and iconic characters can bear this level of complexity in their storylines. I think there is nothing about Harley where she can't be both wild, wacky and crazy and kicking people in the nuts, while at the same time be dealing with things like a death in the family and the very real grief that follows afterwards. The other thing that this comes from is, in my family, I've suffered quite a few deaths. I don't know if it's more than anybody else, but they were all tragic to some degree. What shocked me after each one is how unprepared each of us are to deal with death in this society that mainly covers from the fact that we don't talk about it very much. Death comes for us all, but it comes for our family and friends first, right? Literally everywhere. It happens to almost everybody, but we don't prepare each other for what happens after you lose somebody who is very dear to you. I don't have any crazy life or death wisdom from my experiences, but I did want to take some of the things that I've seen from myself and my own family members and friends and people I've talked to about this stuff and what kind of put it into a Harley Quinn story that shows death is the climax of a story, right? Her mom dying is the climax of that story, quite literally, but it's not the end of that story. For everybody left behind, there is an entire other process of grief that is very dark and confusing and painful to go through. Again, we just don't prepare each other enough for this sort of thing. Not as much as we could or as we should. And I had a lot of smart people saying this book cannot bear having a dark storyline, but I disagreed. I felt like it was really important to come back to the fact that backed into Harley's DNA, somebody who can enjoy really dark turns in their life. This is part of her character. It's part of the emotional core of her character. Just like any other iconic character, if you're the focus in that emotional core, if you build on that emotional core and if you honor that emotional core, you can take that character anywhere and they'll still be the character that everybody knows and loves. I agree. This is brilliant stuff. Even got some of the panels here. Quite exciting. She's there with Booster Gold. If you haven't read it, I might get into some of this stuff. This is amazing. Your run of Harley Quinn has gone to some pretty incredible places, but at what point do you have the idea for her to head to Hollywood and end up in what feels like the closest Harley Quinn comic can get to a James Ellroy novel? Laugh. I can't claim James Ellroy. I'm sure he's a wonderful author. He's just a wonderful author I've never read, so we can relieve James of that burden of influence in his story. But one of my biggest influences on the story, and I wear this on the sleeve of the page, you might say quite obviously in a couple of places, is Inherent Vice, the novel by Thomas Pynchon, but also very much the movie adaptation by Paul Thomas Anderson. That's present in a lot of different ways. One of the things I like about Inherent Vice is it's about a character who is dealing with a very emotional situation in his life, which is a breakup and a reemergence of that love interest. But he sort of works out those issues and pursuing the investigation of a crime that blooms into something well beyond the scope of what he thought he was doing. I feel like we all run into these situations in our lives where we think we're dealing with some sort of emotion within ourselves. But the deeper we dig, the more we realise this is part of something bigger and deeper and more complex. That's where harbouring all these emotions. So in some ways, it's almost like the criminal conspiracy was inside us all along. Waka 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 laughs. But one thing that I found in my experiences dealing with death in my family is that it does give you an ability that you can't get otherwise, which is you can instantly, in a very deep and sincere and meaningful way, emphasise with other people who have been through the same thing that you have. And I wanted to put Harley into that situation where she could use this superpower that she has gained in the face of this tragedy. I guess by that same token, at what point did you think that Booster Gold would make the perfect partner in this detective story, especially considering the last time they went head to head? On some level, I decided in the first 5 pages of Heroes in Crisis because Tom did such a great job writing those two together. He did such a great job, I was convinced that he had changed course since that last time. I had heard the story from him, and he was going to end up with the two of them together in a romantic relationship. But he fooled me again. If you really take a close reading of Heroes in Crisis, Booster and Harley are investigating partners in that book. Yeah, there is a lot of fighting, and a lot of times they are at odds and suspect each other, but these are all hallmarks of crime fiction that Tom expertly played with, writing these two characters, and also you get to see Blue and Gold back together again and backgammon, a lot of great stuff along with it. But I talked with Tom about this and told him that I thought he was like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I've not talked to him since he has read this yet, so I don't know if he's going to want to claim it, but I do think in some ways this is a spiritual successor to Heroes in Crisis, or at least building on things that Tom established in Heroes in Crisis. Your description of Harley as a mixture of aloof and compassion and empathy that rings true in Heroes in Crisis with Booster Gold, and it does almost instantly in this story as well, was getting that part of his character across a priority for you in the writing. I'm a massive fan of Booster Gold. I'm a massive Booster Gold fan. The Justice League International, I run of books sits a foundational text for me, laughs. I know it's the same for Tom as well. So both of us came at these stories as huge, massive fans of Booster Gold. And no knocks to any previous story of Booster Gold, but at least speaking for myself, I saw that there was a lot of potential for Booster that could be explored, that had not been explored yet. In some ways, Booster and Harley are an odd couple. They have diametrically opposed vibes, but on a deeper level, I think they have a lot in common. They both have this undercurrent of pathos and tragedy in their lives, and their backstories. They both try to cover it up with different flavours of bravado. And they're both people who have been, at times, ridiculed and written off by their peers. As 309 laws and inconsequential, they both know that stings. They both know that inside everyone you write off that way. They see the potential in themselves that a lot of their peers don't. So I think there is a lot that they bring to the table for each other. And I think there's a lot of deep ways for them to build connection together, if that is indeed what happens. Well, in Harley Quinn 72, readers get, while not the level of interaction some fans may hope for, definite hits between the two that confirm opposites attract. Honestly, we could record a separate half-hour interview about this, about steps you go through discussing the possibility of a romantic connection between two DC characters who are in play elsewhere at all times. Was that part of your initial pitch, with these small teases of a more substantial, maybe more lasting romantic connection? I mean, a will they, won't they story is not anything I've invented in these pages. It's a well-worn story format. I fall for every time. As far as like the pitch, if you're going to bring somebody like Booster Gold into a book like Harley Quinn, you want to make it count, right? You don't want to use them in a disposable way. You don't want to use them in a way that doesn't bring anything to their character or to the character on whose book they're guest starring. You want to do it in a way that creates a lasting mark on both counts. So Heroes in Crisis 1 was a long time ago, probably over a year ago, and I had considered a couple of different ways. Bringing him in at one point, I was going to do it much sooner, like right on the heels of Heroes in Crisis. But again, on the heels of Heroes in Crisis. But again, out of love and respect for Harley and love and respect for Booster Gold and all the creators who have worked on them before, I wanted to do it in the way that mattered and counted this was a situation where the stars aligned. I think my lingering question is this a long serialized run where the character readers are able to see how each new chapter is being built on one that came before? And Harley is growing out of those as well. This is Harley Quinn easily at her most reckless. So how would you describe this stage of her story for both the month-to-month readers and maybe those who have not followed every single issue? I would describe it as a Harley Quinn, a character who does things we could never get away with in real life, dealing with universal process of grief. In that process, you find yourself overwhelmed in this rising and falling tide of emotion. Sometimes you find yourself seized by compassion unlike anything you have ever felt or comprehending before, and the other times you feel yourself seized by a feeling of fuck it, relentless, because in the face of death or the face of the loss of a loved one, what does anything matter anymore? Sometimes you feel these things simultaneously in the same moment. Harley is the kind of character who is built to explore those kind of emotions. She has been a contradiction since day one, or I shouldn't say contradiction. She's a character who can embrace complex contradictions and sympathize them in one authentic character. That's one who she has been since the very beginning. In some way, she is built to tell this story better than any other character in the DC universe. Wow, that was a long interview. I hope you're enjoying all of this. I've got one more article to read. I know it's gone on a bit today, the DCEU Daily, but I do want to expand the platform a bit and talk about other things. I've not read any of these issues of any of these graphic novels, and just by reading this on Screen Rant, I actually want to get into this. I like Harley Quinn, whether she's in live action, animation, or graphic novels. She's a very interesting character because she starts off as a place as an educated, well-entwined, kind of really clever young woman, and she turns into this lunatic. That's a great story that no one's ever tapped into with any character, including a female character who kind of strays the villain and the hero thing. I absolutely love that element. Finally today, we talk about this news coming in again from Screen Rant. DC Universe's Swamp Thing will air on the CW this summer. Swamp Thing has found a television home with the former DC Universe superhero show set to air on the CW network during the coming summer. Swamp Thing has found a television home with DC Universe show set to air on the CW during the coming summer. The series has debuted on the streaming service in May 2019, airing the 10 episodes of its first season. There is one of 5 live-action programs that have launched on the streaming service. It also had the distinction of being the only live-action show to be cancelled on DC Universe. Meeting its announced end came just a couple of weeks after premiering. This was an absolute shit show because this was a great show, and I'm starting to suspect why they did it. Its demise stemmed from creative differences with the team at Warner Media rather than the popularity and success of the show. In fact, there's some evidence the program, which starred Derek Mears as the titular creature, was one of DC Universe's best shows. Swamp Thing has a 95% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, an astonishing mark the United Kingdom has already witnessed why it's so popular via Amazon Prime. And now American viewers who don't subscribe to DC Universe will get the same opportunity this summer. According to Deadline, the CW network has acquired the rights to air Swamp Thing this summer. Acquisitions like this are common for the network, which also acquired Tell Me a Story, Coroner and Dead Pixels, all set to air in the coming months. None have premiere dates or set airing schedules yet. They are even more important this year. However, as there may not be an ability to create any new content while states and countries are working through stay-at-home orders driven by the coronavirus pandemic. Fans of Swamp Thing may see this as a final opportunity to save a show that was cancelled almost a year ago. People have been clamouring for a second season for months now, with some footage of possible season 2 elements leaking last month. The character made an extremely brief cameo in this year's Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, so it hasn't been forgotten altogether. Ian Ziering, who had a recurring role as Blue Devil on the DC Universe's show, has also expressed optimism in the past about the show one day returning. In this regard, the show couldn't have found a better home than the CW, which has been cranking out superhero shows from DC for almost a decade now. The network also already has a relationship with DC Universe, thanks to its agreement for both to air upcoming series Stargirl. Additionally, there will probably be a captive audience this summer, as the amount of activities available for the general public may be limited by state governments at the end of the summer. The CW's acquisition of Swamp Thing may pay quick dividends. Right, there's a lot of people trying to put 2 and 2 together here, thinking this show's coming back if it's watched. Right, I know that James Wan has been speaking about this as well. I believe that James Wan is developing a movie universe for Swamp Thing, and I think James has been a bit crafty here and a bit malevolent, whatever the word is, right? A bit crafty, a bit snaky, because he is developing a movie universe. He's going to be the producer of this. He won't be directing these different films. And I think that basically he's trying to get some traction on this character, because he's not the most well-known character within DC. Very popular, by the way. Very popular. A great character. But I think he wants people to watch it on the CW. So when this movie universe of Swamp Thing comes to fruition, it could be more popular than it is right now. I would not like to see a CW version of Swamp Thing. If he returns to DC Universe in a darker show, continuing what they did with that series, I'm fine with it. It will be exciting. But I don't want to see a happy-clappy Team Swamp Thing on the CW. Obviously, Berlanti is involved. Basically, CW is partly owned by Warner Brothers. DC Universe is totally owned by Warner Brothers. It's all connected. There's no deals or special handshakes. It's pretty much all the same company. So, did you enjoy today's feature-length DCEU Daily? Comment down below. Like, share and subscribe, and I'll be back tomorrow probably as a relief to my throat and to you with a much shorter version of the DCEU Daily. See you again soon. See you later. Have a lovely day.